Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today's episode is a timely reminder of how our time in uniform can shape not only who we are, but what we're capable of long after service ends. You're going to hear from someone who's mastered the art of endurance and storytelling both in life and on the page. Whether you've dog-eared a copy of the New World series yourself or just appreciate a good tale of resilience, this one's going to resonate. Geoff Hopf served 6 years in the Marine Corps, rising to the rank of sergeant and deploying to Saudi Arabia, an experience that left a lasting imprint on both his worldview and eventually his writing. Like many of us, the transition out wasn't always smooth. He quickly found out just how few people truly grasp what military life is like. And yet, through that disconnect, carved out a new identity. He went from infantry to international bestseller, penning over 40 books rich with grit and realism only lived experience can provide. Now, as the COO of Beyond the Fray Publishing, he's elevating other voices that share in depth of human survival and strength. You want to hear where it all started, what kept him going, and how he continues to lead in business, in literature, and in life. Geoff, brother, welcome to the show, and thanks for being here, man.
Adam, thank you so much. Who's that person you were talking about? I don't know who that
Right, I get that a
It
lot,
sounds
man.
really good. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. But that's you, dude. You did all those things, and so we're gonna get into that. So let's just talk about it, man. Where did you grow up, and what inspired you to become a United States Marine?
I grew up in Maryland on a farm. It wasn't a working farm. It was like an old tobacco farm. It was like we had, there was like 100 almost 200 acres of land that my grandfather had acquired back in the 1930s. And then my granddad was a big family guy. So he had seven kids, and then there's all these cousins. But he essentially granted a plot of land for each son or daughter he had. And so I grew up on that farm, and literally like my grandparents were across the field, and my aunt and uncle were over in another field, another aunt and uncle over there. So it was an awesome childhood. It really was. My parents were awesome. Like no complaints about any of that. My dad was a Marine as well. He did 3 years. It was post Korea, and he was infantry as well. He was I think he was with Third Battalion, Ninth Marines over in Okinawa, and he had nothing but wonderful experiences from his time in. And so I was kind of inspired by him to go kind of down that path. But to be honest, I'd gotten really good grades in high school, and I was like looking at going to college, but I just had this itch, like I wanted to see the world, I wanted to do things. And because of my dad's experience and just watching movies and the whole romanticism of like Marines or SEALs, whatever, all these different military units. I looked at the Marine Corps as they're an expeditionary force, and I was like, okay, these guys will travel the world, so the best place to put myself is in the infantry because that'll more than likely get me forwardly deployed. You get to go on ships and sail around, Westpacks and things like that. So I signed up. I wasn't like the smartest guy. I remember I did one because I did really good on the ASVAB, and I had really good grades. And the recruiter still remember me. He was a corporal at the time, Corporal Tubin. He was like, "You sure you want to like sign up for infantry? Like that's what I was signing up for." He goes like, "Anybody can get infantry. Any knucklehead can get that." And I was like, "Yeah, I want guaranteed infantry." I was like, well, "That's not going to be a problem, bro." So I signed up for six though, so I could get my guaranteed MOS, and then also they offered guaranteed E3. So within a certain period of time, which of course I didn't know, like everyone gets anyway. It's like a rubber stamp, right? You just if you can just breathe and stand up, you're going to probably get you're going to get E3 no matter what service you're in. I didn't know any of this stuff. So I go in. My dad was even coaching me. He's like, "Are you sure you want to sign six? Because you kind of have the leverage if you want to you do four and you want to reenlist. They'll probably give you a bunch of shit. Oh, I know what I'm talking about." So those years when you're a teen, you think you know everything, and anyone that has any wisdom, you look at them like they don't know what they're talking about. So I did the six. I joined right in again because I wanted to travel around the world. Kind of wanted to see a lot of things. What's the old saying? Travel to exotic lands, meet interesting people, right? Drink
Yep.
their beer and shoot them.
Right.
That kind of stupid shit, right? So I did that, and my time in the Corps was great. Like I tend to focus on the positive anyway. I mean, was every experience pleasant? Were there lots of very uncomfortable moments, lots of just weird stuff, and just sometimes very unpleasant people? And it's yeah, but I I look at it. I'm very grateful to my country. I am very grateful to my country that I had the opportunity to do that because I think it's a really cool experience for young people, young men. I think it's a really cool experience for young men. I just frame it that way. I don't tend to look at again the bad shit, whatever. I always look at the good stuff. So I did 6 years, and by then, after and when my sixth was coming up, I was done.
Yeah,
I
and
wanted out.
it's so funny that you joined a lot the same way that I did. I didn't have any military influence growing up, and I didn't have quite the same childhood that you did because my parents, broken home, all that stuff. A lot of issues in my childhood. But I joined the army because I wanted to travel as well. I wanted to see the world, and I joined infantry just because I got sold by the videos, man. Like that's really what it was. And I don't regret any of it. I'm glad I was an infantryman. I think it's by far and away the best branch within the army. But I'm biased, of course, and we're different. But I also signed a 6-year contract against a lot of people's advice because
Yeah.
my thinking at the time was I knew college wasn't for me. I didn't really have good grades. I wasn't dumb, but school just wasn't for me. It just wasn't something that I enjoyed. I just did what I had to do to play sports to keep my grades up
Mhm.
and the kind of the bare minimum. And I knew college wasn't for me, particularly growing up in small town Indiana. I didn't have the grades to get into the Notre Dames or the bigger schools, and I was looking at going to like Kentucky Wesleyan, or it just didn't appeal to me. I just wanted out. I wanted out of small town Indiana. I knew there was more to the world, and I knew that was never going to happen if I didn't like make this decision. And so I thought by the end of 6 years, I'll know if this is for me or not. Like for sure, I'll know. And hindsight's 2020, man, because as I decided to continue to make the army a career, that actually worked in my favor because now I would be able to reenlist for most bonuses without having to go in def early. But obviously never reached that point because the med board came after 4 deployments
Mm.
and all that good stuff. So, the career got cut short. But I totally relate to why you joined for 6 years, whether you knew it at the time or not. 6 years is a long time, and that's more than enough time to really determine if this is for you or not.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me now I can it hasn't changed. Time can change kind of your viewpoints and perspective. When I go back, like during those first 3 to 4, those core years of those the major deployments I had, was with the same crew of guys, right? And they all had some guys had one guy had a 3-year contract, and most everyone had 4-year contracts. And so these are the core group of guys I hung with. I knew we were friends, we're brothers. They all transitioned out. And then here I am now. I'm an NCO, specifically a sergeant, and they're just a bunch of new people I didn't really know. I didn't have a lot of connection with them, and it was just it sounds like such a that's a pathetic word to say, but I was like I feel like alone, like all my guys had left, and here I'm like by myself, and I'm supposed to be in charge of a unit, a squad, and just like it's just I don't know. I was just I did it had lost a lot of it for me because I really like the camaraderie, I like the brotherhood of it all. And when those guys got out, it was very hard to because you're not really supposed to be fraternizing too much, so to
Of
speak, and
course.
right? And like I
Well,
had
I,
like
I relate to this a ton too, brother, because
yeah.
my first 9 years in the army was all with 2-7 infantry at third ID. So I was supposed to. I mean, I had orders deleted to PCS between my second and third deployment. We couldn't. I mean, we were stopped moved constantly because of the deployment cycle, and so I relate to that because I spent 9 years in the same unit, which means I knew everybody
Hmm.
on that post, and I watched people cycle in and out, and I had the same feelings. Like as you climb the ranks and new people come in, you lose some of that camaraderie. But I think for me, it was the challenge of rebuilding that camaraderie with new people, kind of every deployment cycle, because it was always new people. And then finally, it was my turn to leave, and then go to another post. So I totally respect that feeling, and that is a lot and enough to make somebody want to get out for sure.
Yeah, let me like I don't know how it is in the Army, but in the Marine Corps, once you in order to like even have any and even dream about becoming like a staff NCO, they want you to go to what they call a B billet. kind
Yeah.
of your position, whether it's recruiter, a drill field, that kind of thing.
Same thing in the Army.
And I was just like, and it's a whole nother thing when you go from that sergeant to the staff, as staff and staff sergeant. There's all the testing, there's all this other stuff that's going on. And there's, I think, a little bit of politics that goes on. You kind of have to go in there and massage kind of the senior enlisted and the officers and things like that. I just wasn't that guy. I just wasn't that guy. And I didn't look at the drill field as something romantic. I didn't look at recruiting as, and I'd even done like this. They had this program early on where after I'd gotten back from Desert Storm, there was this kind of this program. I'm not even sure if they still do it, but they offered, like, I think it was called recruiter assistance program, something like that, where somebody that was active could take, like, you get 30 days, doesn't count against leave, to go back and work for the recruiter that recruited you. And you go and essentially you're just like an intern, really. And I was like, that's great. I get 30 days to hang at home. And I was feeling really good. I had a bunch of ribbons. No one had ribbons by then. I mean, no one had anything. I think everyone's got a big stack, a big, salad bowl now. But it was really cool. But then I was like, this is what you do every day. This is boring. Like, I was just like, I don't want to do this for whatever. So there was that also element too. Like, if I knew I was going to have any kind of sustaining, I was going to have to do something like that. I was done. So at 6, actually, I got out like 5 years in like 11 months. I had racked up a bunch of leave. So I took like 60 days terminal leave. Like, I was done.
And the Army's the same, man. I think that's the difference in our era of when we served, because I came in 2003, so 9/11 had already happened. I got to my unit between 2 weeks and a month after they came home from the invasion. So life for me as a private really sucked. But a lot of those qualifiers in order to make rank, because you're starting, like, my whole career was the beginning to basically the end of GWAT, right? So every other year deployed. A lot of those qualifiers, other than your leadership schools, so PLDC, BNOC, ANOC, those kind of things, as E5, E6, those leadership schools, you still had to go to those to get promoted. But they kind of suspended the additional duties, or the professional development side of things with recruiting and drill. Those used to be required, one or the other, sometimes both, to make E7. As an infantry guy, a Ranger tab was a must. All of that kind of got suspended as I was coming up the ranks, because the op tempo was so high for the surge and GWAT and all of that. So I think I would have been in a similar boat to you. Drill definitely never appealed to me, just because I didn't want to be up at 4 a.m. every day and going to bed at 10 o'clock at night every day for 3 fucking years. That just didn't appeal to me. Recruiting, like you, I thought that was going to be really fucking boring. We had a program similar to what you were talking about called hometown recruiting. And that's where you would leave basic training or AIT. You would go back home for that 30 to 60 days, like you were talking about, as like a private. So you don't have any kind of experience and you just go help your recruiter. I think that program went away because it was kind of a detriment to soldiers' development. Like, you've got this break between basic training and going to your regular unit. So, I never participated in that program, but I had a lot of buddies that were recruiters, and the horror stories they told me about having to make mission and getting in trouble because they didn't make mission, it just didn't appeal to me. And then Ranger School wasn't even an option. Like, we didn't get slots. We didn't have time to go to schools like that because, one, we were a mechanized unit. So there's not really need for Rangers. They really want to push you more to like my golf school and stuff like that. But also, we just didn't have time with the operational tempo. I mean, at certain points of my career, JRTC and NTC would pack up and come to our post just to get us out the door faster.
Yeah, the going back to the recruiter thing, there was this other, like, I agree with you. I think it's a mistake to have someone come right out of recruit training boot camp and then go right into something. They need to. I'm a believer they need to go to another schooling and they need to get into the pipeline and get out to their unit whenever that is. But one of the experiences I had is like Tubin was a sergeant at the time, because he was a corporal when he recruited me, and he was a sergeant when I went to go work for him for those 30 days. And he wanted me to get these recruits that were on delayed entry. He goes, Hopf, why don't you get out there? I want you to like he was like every Friday, I think it was, like on base. So there was a base close by, Patuxent River Naval Air Station. And still there, it's like a test center now. They do a bunch of stuff. I think it's tied in with, I think they even have like NASA and JPL. So it kind of crosses over different and like with space and stuff like that. Anyway, we had access to the base, and so he wanted me to take some of these recruit these like what do they call them, listees over there and like do PT with them. Well, I'm like an infantry guy, and we just are just crude and foul mouth. It's just it
Yep.
was a huge mistake because I went over there and I was just like beating the shit out of these guys.
Yep.
And one guy was just this poor Indian kid. I was just like on a fat body. It was bad. I mean, I was on this kid because that's just like what
That's the
got.
infantry mentality. And
Yeah, like, dude, you're
I
a
try
fat
to
ass.
tell
What are you doing?
I try to tell people, and I assume it's the same in the Marine Corps because you're talking about it like I talk about it in the Army, but the infantry might as well be a separate entity, all of its own. It's completely different from the rest of the Army. And I have like several experiences with, not to offend anyone, but I don't know about soft skill MOSs. We'll just go with that instead. But several of them would come, yeah, that's what we call them too. But I kind of I have a lot of pogues come on this show, so we got to be nice to the pogues. But it's a term of endearment, really. Like we do respect you and what's going on, but
we
also,
need the pogues.
Yeah, of course. We can't do our job without them. But I remember specifically they would get attached to us for certain field problems or whatever, and they would just be completely out of their own depth. They're like, this is the life you guys live every day. And I think the prime example is my sister was an Air Force officer. She just got out last year after 10 years in a major, but she was weather. And when she was stationed in Hawaii, she got attached to the 25th ID out there. And she was constantly in the field. And she called me one time from the field and she's like, how have you done this your entire fucking career? I'm dirty. I want to fucking shower. I can't handle this. This is fucking stupid. You're all stupid. Why would you do this? And I'm just like, takes a special kind of somebody, like it's just a different world.
So yeah. And it's a different mentality. I don't know if we want to get into a bunch of storytelling here, but we were doing it was like my third deployment. We did UDP over to Okinawa. It was like a 6-month rotation, and we get attached to the 31st MEU, and we're over there, and we're going to do some live fire training, but on the mainland Japan at the base of Mount Fuji. There's like a base there in Fuji, and I mean it's picturesque, man. Like in the foreground is like Mount Fuji. It's unbelievable. Amazing. Again, it all fits into this whole kind of thing. Like this is why I joined. Look at that. There's Mount Fuji there. It's impressive as hell. And so so after we do all this great live fire, things like that, heavy machine guns, heavy weapons, Mark 19, blah, blah, we end up, we roll back. We're going to go back to Okinawa. We're at an Air Force base. And we're like, dude, let's go get we've been in the field for 2 weeks. Let's go get some chow. Like Air Force has the best chow house. Like this is going to be amazing. True. It's going to be like a 5-star Michelin restaurant. And so they wouldn't let us. They wouldn't they like kept us in a hangar. Like, no, you guys are not allowed to go. Like they were terrified of us. These grunts that were coming in like, no. Here. And they threw us like some MREs and kept us in a hangar. Yep. I was like, this is so typical. We're like the redheaded stepchildren. And like, they would not let us they wouldn't let us off the field. It was hilarious. It's a stupid story, but it just kind of really shows that's kind of how I think infantry line units are treated. We're the red-headed stepchildren, right? They like us, but they want to kind of keep us at arm's length. They really don't want to kind of intermix with us.
And I'll tell you that hasn't changed since your time from when I was going through it. I specifically remember, and as you can imagine, because you had a deployment, the infantry units end up on tops way far removed from the bigger FOBs or bases, Kandahar, think Kandahar, CAF or Lagram or any of those bigger that have multiple chow halls and, they're cities essentially. And we would come in from the COP on like supply runs or mail drops or whatever, and our uniforms are faded. They look filthy. A lot of them have blood on them, right? Because we're out fighting a fucking war. And we would get denied entry into the chow hall. Like, you need to go put a fucking PT belt on and you need to change into a crispy uniform. And it's like, motherfucker, I've been spending a year out here on this COP fighting a fucking war, and I just want some fucking food. I don't have a crispy uniform. In fact, this is the best one I have. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So that hasn't changed, brother. It really
That's crazy. Like that shit, like I expected it during the Gulf War just because we hadn't had any level of sustained combat or anything since like Vietnam. And what we had that we like what this is what so I got over to the desert like early. We got there in September. Like Saddam had invaded in August. Anyway, so this is before they even had desert camis. They had like they pulled all these old desert camis out of like these freaking storage. They had like the chocolate chip ones with
Mm-hmm.
the big old like 70s collars. I mean,
Yeah,
it was
I
like
did my
hip.
first deployment in those.
Yeah, so that's what they issued us, and the quality was really good. It wasn't like the ripstop material; it was like really good quality. They had those, but they didn't. There wasn't like desert boots, so none of that shit existed. And so we were because we were just in Okinawa. We had our like whatever our issue like leather boot, which is bullshit. Hey, they were garbage. And then we had jungle boots. So we were wearing jungle boots in the desert, and so the eyelets were popping out of them, and
Yep.
I remember we rolled back into like one of these like supply bases to get some stuff. And same thing, we look like we're just like rolling out of we're all filthy and dirty and haven't shaved and got long hair. And like I've got jungle boots on. There's people like in this PX line. These women Marines are like stiff. They had the boonie hats are all they had ironed out and their camis are all this. And they had brand new desert boots. Like I heard about those. They're like unicorns, like these mythical things. They actually exist. And we're sitting there like shit. And I was like, why are we getting why does this person have desert boots? And
Yeah, the people who
we have
aren't doing
jungle
anything.
boots.
Yeah.
I know, like it's just the shit never stops. You know, we were denied sometimes stuff too because we had live ammo and all this stuff. You can't go here, you
Oh
can't do
yeah.
this. Like sit outside the berm and wait. We'll bring you some MREs.
I forget where I was at. It was either my third or fourth deployment, but we were told we couldn't bring live ammo into the chow hall. And it's like, motherfucker. Like, do you understand? We just rolled in the gate from a patrol, and you're about to close and you're telling us we have to offload all of our load. I mean, we're all running around with at least 210 rounds on our kits. It's ridiculous, and proves the point. Like the infantry is just it's a completely different monster from the rest of the military.
But I
But
loved it.
oh, I did too. I
I
wouldn't
loved
change
every
it. Well,
yeah.
and to your point, you spoke about you could do anything you want in the Marine Corps. Are you sure you want anybody can get infantry? However, the caveat to that is some of the smartest, brightest minds I ever met in my
Mm-hmm.
career, and I mean some pure geniuses, just blow your mind with how smart they are, served in the infantry. We're not all dumb.
Well, but that's just such a the crayon eater knuckle dragger bullshit thing. I let's just be honest. Look at the level of responsibility, and you really get a grasp on this when you get out or and you get older and you look back, and specifically when you contextually look at 18, 19, 20 year olds today, and we're thinking like, wow, I was a 21-year-old corporal, and look at the level of responsibility that I had.
Yeah,
It's insane.
yeah.
Like you're in charge of people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're making decisions that are literally people want to use that life or death. Like you're literally life and death.
Yes.
Decisions are being made at that level on an NCO level. I mean, that's what always made whenever we learn about the Warsaw Pact doctrine and the NATO doctrine. That's what made I think us so successful is that we would instill into that enlisted NCO the ability to make command decisions when they needed to within a certain amount of discretion, right? And it's powerful. I mean, you really think about would you take a normal 20-year-old right now off the street? Most 20-year-olds you can't even trust them at a copying machine. And now we're entrusting them with weapons and with the decision making that literally is life and death. I think it's impressive. And you're right, the amount of intellect and line units and infantry units it exceeds way more than conventional wisdom. What
Yeah.
people think.
100%. Let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about the end of your 6 years and through this show and through my own personal experience, transition out is rarely easy. I find that the people who say they didn't have issues in their transition usually have some kind of extenuating circumstance that really, they've got a fallback or something like that. They have some, previous life experience. They didn't come in right out of high school or whatever, and they tend to be outliers. So let's talk about your transition. Was it easy, or did you stumble and fall and hit some of those roadblocks that we all seem to hit?
Well, it's a great question. I've been asked it before, and I have thought long and hard about it. And I am a person though that will look at. I think things are relative. How you define a stumbling block.
Mm-hmm.
I've always, for some reason, it's been in me organically. I think my dad kind of instilled this stuff into me to look at anything that happens to me that's bad or is negative as an opportunity for learning and growth. I know it's like I was like equipped with that at a young age, and I've really leaned into that a lot. And now that I have the years of wisdom, the years behind me to look back on, I can now go, well, that kind of thinking is made me who I am today. It was successful.
Mhm.
That kind of thinking was successful. So when answer like stumbling, I guess maybe I did. I look at my transition as good. I mean, we went through you go through all the classes and all that bullshit, before you get out.
It's exactly what it is, too.
Yeah,
Bullshit.
it's
It's
just a bunch
completely
of
not
stuff
helpful. It's
like PowerPoint presentations, and what helped me is I got out and then I went right. I didn't go to college, and I actually never ended up going to college. I was like thinking about it, but I just got too busy, like living and doing stuff. And I was still kind of, even though I had that adventure bug in me, the Marine Corps, I checked that off. But there were some other things I wanted to do that was adventurous. And so I went right from the Marine Corps right into, I mean, God, I didn't skip a beat. It was like a couple months later, I was at commercial diving school down in Texas.
nice.
And what's interesting is when it was a 6 month course, and everyone in the room were vets.
Yeah.
And so I went from hanging with a group of guys that could speak my language to hanging with a group of guys that could speak my language.
Which eliminates the loss of community problem that we see
And
so often.
I think that is something when I have thought about it and watching how some guys like stumble and things, really aren't working out for them and they're having some mental health issues. I think that it stems from that loss of community.
Mhm.
I think there's also a loss of purpose.
Yes. So there's
I
three
think,
big things that I've identified through doing this
okay.
show and just through my own. It's the first and foremost loss of identity, loss of purpose, loss of community.
Yeah.
There's several other things through over 100 and I think 50 or more of these that I've done at this point that keep recurring and keep coming up, but they're not as big issues as those first three. And the identity one seems to be a huge issue, particularly for guys like myself. I came in at 17, spent a year on the delayed entry, and then was deployed every other year for my whole career. So those 4 years of college that most of our peers get, I think are really formative for at least building some kind of identity versus, I went from the authoritative, my parents' house to the authoritative, the Army's now my parents. So never really had a chance to develop, a true identity outside of be the best infantryman for the United States Army in support of the global war on terror that you can be. And fuck, I came in and it was be all you can be. That was the Army slogan right before it changed to Army of One, And so I think that's a big, big problem and one of the biggest challenges we face. And so those three things are the three things that I harp on a ton. And kind of what the premise of this show is like, how can we find our identity? How can we restore purpose? And how can we rebuild our community?
You nailed it. I've never read any literature on it or talked to experts about it, so-called experts about it. But when I've thought long and hard about it, those are exactly the three things I've discovered. Communities lost, purpose. Because think about the purpose. Like here we are as young men doing grand things, huge things, lots of responsibility, like we talked about earlier. But you're like involved in events that are historical, and you're going to places, you're doing things. It's huge, and then go from that, and then now you're back in little podunk town, Iowa. No one speaks your language, no one understands you, and now you've got a job and you're doing whatever here, and you're like, what the fuck? Like it's a culture shift because you're living in a culture, and I know this too. Like infantry, it's a culture. It's and which is good. You cannot you have to have that kind of inbred cultural experience when you're in infantry. That is the identity too. I mean, that's what your stormtroopers or whatever whatever that is. It's a part of a deep culture that has a deep heritage as well. And those are things I think that make the United States military a success. I know when I look at the Marine Corps and something they drill into us, it's almost cult-like, is this connection to our past and understanding that there were other Marines before you. And that's why they really, because what that did, it makes you part of it. It makes you want to then, I want to add to that lineage. I want to add to that heritage. I want to be part of this from the Revolutionary War all the way up to whatever it is in Iraq and Afghanistan. Like you're part of that like lineage and legacy.
Yeah,
And
for
so
me, it
the
was always
culture,
like, I'm going to be in the history books. Like they're going
yes.
to
And so that's
write.
that identity. So now
Like,
it's huge.
yeah,
And I think coming from that and then going to that and going to dive school, it's all the same guys. There's Army guys, there's Navy guys, there's like Marines. We're all just like knuckleheads doing cool stuff. And now we're doing deep sea diving. We're all speaking the same language. You all have similar experiences. It was just like, so I did that. And then, so 6 months, and then they had job placement, rotated right into a job. And of course, everyone on the dive boats, everyone on the platforms, they're the same people, all speaking the same language. And I did that for 2 years and almost got killed by being sucked into a pipe. That's a whole nother story. But that's just being stupid. But and then I go and I get this opportunity to work as an executive protection agent, as a bodyguard. And the same thing. Guess who are in the ranks of those?
yep,
You
same
got, you
people,
got
same
same
people.
people. So I did
Yep.
that for like over a decade. So I think I met, and I'm doing that stateside primarily. And so I get to come back to the States. I'm working with the same people who understand me, speak my language. And I slowly, over a period of time, kind of immerse back into society, so to speak. The time, this time away from it, but yet I'm still there and I'm still feeling that connection, that brotherhood, the fraternity. So I think I was able to successfully, not having too many issues really. I mean, it's not as if I didn't like miss a lot of those, like a lot of my friends, and turn to drinking. Drinking's evil. I don't drink anymore.
It's poison. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
poison.
and
It's so bad
yeah,
for you.
yeah. But it's also. I mean, God, I learned how to drink when I was in the Marine Corps. Like, I
Yeah,
mean,
of course.
I drank before, but then there's drinking when you're in service.
Yeah, yep.
It's like an Olympic
Particularly,
sport.
I mean, again, another separation. Like, drink with an infantry platoon and go drink with a comms platoon. Completely different. They're going to
Uh,
drink you under the table. It's and
Drink,
still
and then we
function.
just do. Yeah, and then we do stupid shit.
Yeah, we'll be up for PT at 4:30 the next morning to run 9 miles. No
Oh,
big
we think
deal.
it's cool when we're
Yeah,
vomiting when we're running. It's like,
yeah.
it's like that.
Well, it's one of those situations too, like a formation run, right? Everybody's back in my day when I was a private, was 211 Steel Reserve was the one, because it was so cheap and it would fuck you up. But being in formation runs early in the morning and you just smell it coming out everybody's pores, and it only takes one person to start puking before the whole formation's puking, and that's a good day for an infantry platoon. Like that's starting the day off right. Like, so you did the commercial diving thing for a decade. What was it like? Well, first of all, why did you leave that and go write 40 books? That's
Yeah,
pretty
so I went.
impressive.
Yeah, so I went commercial diver for about 2 years,
Okay,
and then
and then
bodyguarding
executive protection.
executive protection work for over a decade after that. The commercial diving contrary to popular belief, you don't make a lot of money, unless you're like doing saturation diving, things like that. And I don't want to get down the whole thing about the commercial dive. Maybe it's a completely different world today, but I highly doubt it. You just don't get paid a lot. Anyway, there's the mirage of being paid a lot because you like go out, like it's almost like mini deployments. You kind of go out on a platform for like 30 days, 45 days, and everything's provided for you. And then when you come back, you get a nice big check because it's all saved up. You have nowhere to spend it. And so there's like this mirage, you get paid a lot. You don't get paid shit. And
Like everything else.
it's just, again, unless you're a sat diver and you're making $2,000 a day, but those are the very few of those guys. Very few of those guys. And that's incredibly dangerous.
It's
Incredibly
just
dangerous.
like I've similarly, before I figured out I could go to flight school, I looked at being an underwater welder. And
Yeah, that's what that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was doing that. I was doing underwater construction work, welding, burning, you
Yeah.
name it. That's exactly what I was doing.
And
But when
I
I almost
found
got
out
killed,
I found
you
out
did?
quick that, well, no, I found out the reason I didn't end up doing that is because, like you were saying, it's an illusion of a lot of money unless you have some very specific qualifications and you really want to risk it all.
Yeah, you're basically just, going back to, you're just a grunt, doing grunt stuff, and you start out as a tender. So you do your schooling, so you know enough about how to work and the overall concept of how to wear your equipment. You go in, you work for a company, a dive company. You're working as a tender. Tenders are essentially, I've always said, it's the equivalent of a squire to a knight. You're assigned like a diver. So you'll be out on a job site. You're the tender. The tender sets up the entire, dive, all the equipment, the compressors, you name it, all they get everything set up. And while the master diver is just sitting back smoking a cigarette, hanging out, I mean, it's like he's like whatever, and you do everything for him, and you run comms, you do everything, and then you get him in the water. He does the work. He gets out. You strip him down. You clean him up. You clean his suit. Even if he takes a shit in it, you got to clean everything. And then he goes back and starts smoking again. And you're working brutally long hours. I think when I was working in Texas, I was working outside of Houston. I was making like $5 an hour inside the warehouse when you're just setting up. And then I think it was, what was it? Like 850 or something like that, an hour on the job site. It was
That's
horrible.
fucking
And then
terrible.
it was horrible. And then I broke out as a diver after, was it a year? I broke out. They call it a breakout, where you start getting wet. And then it goes up to 1250. Woo.
Yay.
But I almost got sucked into a pipe. I was doing some grunt work in front of this open pipe, and he had this plug in it. And I didn't know what I was doing. No one had told me, because a lot of the stuff you get, it's like on the job, like to learn specific jobs, how to do specific jobs. No one told me don't lay in front of the pipe. So I remove all these sandbags and like, hey, Hoff, because you have radio communications, because you got an umbilical cord. Like, I wanted you to remove the plug. So you had this plug in there, and then the pipe behind it's vacant. Well, it wasn't supposed to be, but it had been an abandoned pipeline. So they had cut it off, and they had put a plug in it, and they put some inert gas in it. They vacated. What they were going to replace it, they're going to do something with it. And so they were supposed to fill the pipe so there's not this void. So I'm like 36 feet down on the Trinity River, it's like east of Houston. And I've removed the sandbags, I'm removing the plug, and it's like a 36-inch pipe opening. I'm laying in front of it. I'm removing the plug, and I start hearing this. I had a band mask. It sounded like a total hard hat. It's got like the hard face and then like a neoprene hood with a rubber like spider that attached to my head. So I could actually hear a little bit like under the water. And I hear this like sucking sound. And I was like, what is that? And I'm holding onto this valve, and all of a sudden the plug shoots in and pulls me into the pipe. The only thing to stop me is I have broad shoulders. Like my shoulder caught, and I'm holding onto this plug. Like a mile down, there's these engineers, and the manhole cover goes shooting up in the air, because imagine all this water now wants to go into this pipe. And they're like, what the hell's going on? I'm screaming on the radio. Anyway, they managed to yank me up. They had all the guys we were on the pontoon boat, pull my ass up out of there. Oh yeah, it was crazy. After that, I was talking to my dad. I was like, I almost fucking died for $12 an hour. Like, this is bullshit.
Yeah, I'm about done with this shit.
My dad was like, wow, I know so-and-so works for Vance International. You want to go talk to him? He does bodyguard work. I'm like, that sounds amazing. I want to go to a bodyguard. Because that's less dangerous.
And so what inspired you to start writing your post-apocalyptic fiction and westerns and all of that? And how does your background influence all of that?
Well, one thing I was always growing up, and even in the Marine Corps and past, was a big reader. I just consumed a lot of books, and I liked my favorite, is classically is like Ernest Hemingway. Here's the guy like writing about the stuff. He's the guy who'd actually done everything too, from World War I and blah 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 blah. I thought it was like really cool, and I was like, that'd be a really cool job to be like a novelist. Like, I wonder if I could do that. Like, and the main thing was I dabbled, and I didn't think I was that good at it. And then I get married, and we have some kids, and one thing I loved to do with my daughters when they were little is I'd go in and read to them, right? And I was like, oh, this is really neat. I told my wife, what if I created my own like children's book? And like, really? I'm like, yeah, I really, how hard can it be? So I did it. I had the idea of it. I put all the pieces together. I wrote it. I found an illustrator, put all the pieces together. Next thing I had a book in my hand. And I thought that was really cool. And that's what really lit. I was 30. How old was I? I was 39 or 40 years old when I did that. And that really lit the creative light bulb for me. For the first time, I'd always been doing more physical jobs, like using my body and that kind of stuff. Not really hadn't transitioned yet to be more cerebral.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I can do this. I can take something from idea, put the effort behind it, the consistency and the discipline, and now it's here as something physical in my hand. Like, okay, this is cool. And I was reading a lot of apocalyptic fiction at that time. I love apocalyptic. I've always like movies, books. That's one of my genres I love.
It's military thrillers for me, so I get
Yeah,
it. I totally
yeah.
get it.
And I was like, well, and I like, by the way, I like military thrillers too. And so if you're ever to read The End or the New World Series, it's a mix of all of it.
Hell yeah.
Okay. And I was like, okay, but I wasn't finding stuff that I wanted like that, like a blending of genre, like a blending of genres. And I wanted a very complicated plot. And I was like, well, if I can't find it to read it, why don't I just write it? And I just set about to writing it. And there's a story behind where I had to convince my wife at first. I'm an idea guy. I'm always coming up with these crazy ideas. And anyway, so I wrote it and I got an agent for it. Crazy enough, someone actually thought it was good, and ended up finding her anyway. Didn't matter. And then
You started your own publishing company.
Well, that was later, but I was just like, she wanted to change things to the first manuscript, and I'd had enough people outside of friends and family that had read it, like beta readers, that liked it and didn't critique it, because there's a lot of violence in it, and there's just, again, there's a character. One's a former Marine, another is his brother who's still in the Marines, and so you're seeing as the collapse happens, I wanted to give, and I'll kind of jump into the book if you want, that first book, and what kind of blends the genres you're talking about, like military thriller, is you have this event that occurs, and it's a super EMP, and then I wanted to show the readers what happens in a very kind of the TV show 24.
I love that show.
I always like that
Kiefer Sutherland. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, what if we had like an event happens, and now you're going by hour, day by day, as you're watching society slowly crumble and fall apart. And that's going to see the event, super EMP, grid down scenario. And you have a group of people in San Diego that are trying to figure out how to deal with it. Then you've got his brother who's in the Marine Corps. They're forwardly deployed. They're in Afghanistan. You're watching what's happening inside the military as they're struggling with the nation. The entire country's down. It's chaos. And Washington, D.C. gets nuked. And so you're like, what happens in the military? Are they really this monolithic kind of entity, or will there be fractures inside of it? And I kind of wanted to show people what would happen then, and I also have a set of characters that are inside what's remaining of the government. So you, as the reader, get this full kind of understanding of what's happening in all different parts.
I'm sold.
And
I'm sold, man. This is awesome.
So the military aspect, and I think I was like, people don't understand the military is a group of individuals that have a common purpose, and if suddenly that common purpose is taken away, then the next thing is I got to protect my family. I got to protect my blood. How do I do that? Some people may not give a shit. And some people are like, no, I think I'm out. Like, I don't need to do this. The country's gone anyway. It's just factions fighting. I'm not going to be part of this. I'm going to go over here. So I think you would start to see the government, the military fracture.
Yeah.
And people just leave. Like, and by the way, there's historical precedents for that. When you look at the American Revolution, you see this. When you even look at the American Civil War, you start to see that. Specifically on the Confederate side. When the purpose or the cause seems to be lost, guys just start breaking ranks. They're like, I'm out. I'm going to go back and protect my family in Georgia. I'm going to go back and do this. Like,
some of we're tiptoeing along that now.
Yeah, you could have that. Like, and when you lose that common unifying purpose, then what's the point of being together? Why are you banding together and specifically wanting to risk your life when you're supposed to be doing it for your family? You're supposed to be doing it to protect the homeland. What if the homeland is now under threat, like directly? Your family is actually in harm's way. Do you stay and fight for a government official over here? Or do you say, I'm out, I'm going back to protect my family? I think that's a real question people can get. I've had some people get like, that's traitorous. I'm like, you clearly didn't serve and understand that we're not this monolithic kind of thing. Like, why are we serving, right? Like, you have to understand, why do we serve? Yeah, we have our selfish things that we like to do. We want to go blow stuff up or travel the world. We have those kind of things. But then we also have the greater purpose of country. But what is country? It's an idea, but it's also our families.
As best I can tell, it's everybody, like you said, has their own unique reasons, but I think subconsciously at the core of it, it's serving something larger than yourself. And so if that breaks down, what's larger than yourself at that point? It's your family, your legacy, or those you care about, or something. There is something larger than yourself that you're going to default to when the main thing breaks down, right? And so I'm already so
100%.
I'm going to read your series. Like I said, I'm a big, I'm on the Gray Man series, the Orphan X series, several other series like that. I love those types of books. I love how Mark Graney and Jack Carr and all of those guys kind of bring their life into their novels. And I really like where you're going with all of this. I think it's going to be a really interesting read and really make me think. And I didn't used to read fiction a lot because I didn't think that it would help me in any way, shape, or form be more creative. Now, primarily, all I read is fiction because it really does spark that creative kind of whatever in my brain, which is something that you and I had talked about before we started recording here, and kind of how being an author or just creating in general is kind of the way forward after military service, because particularly in our cases, we spend a lot of time destroying things. And now I get
Yeah.
to build things, and it's way cooler, man. I mean, anybody can destroy anything, but to
Yeah.
build something really takes something, something special. And so I would like to talk about that in whatever way, shape, or form we can to try and get those that are listening who may be struggling with transitioning out and finding meaning and purpose and identity and all of that. How has creativity and how has becoming an author and starting a publishing company and all of that really helped you through all of those things? Because I'm willing to bet that you're in a much better place now than you ever were diving or 10 years of executive protection. I'm willing to bet that you have reached what you would define success as for yourself, correct?
100%. Yeah. Like I'm very fortunate, and but leaning into creativity is, again, you and I were talking before the interview about like, that's what we do in the military. We're there as a force to destroy things. We're supposed to exact the will of our nation, right, on our enemies,
Converse, I
which
mean,
means
the 7-8 in the Army, which is the infantryman's Bible, says your job as an infantryman is to close with and destroy the enemy.
destroy.
Like it's in the actual regulation. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Close in with destroy. I forgot that. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a great name for a title, by the way.
Isn't it? Isn't it?
It is actually. Um, yeah, and then so I think for me, now that I didn't even think about it in that kind of way about being a creator,
Mhm.
like I'm going from this aspect of my life to creation, uh, until later on. Again, I had little glimpses of it. It wasn't until I really got into like deep meditation and things like that that I really started to understand what I was doing and how powerful it was and how I feel when I do that. I love it. When I look at my life now, I'm truly blessed. I love where I'm at, and it takes that first step, and then you just kind of keep leaning into it, and like creating worlds in books is so much fun. Like I can sit and talk for hours with other authors or script or screenwriters about world building. It's so much fun. And when you're talking about fiction, I've been saying this for years and years, and I was happy to know that Lee Child, who's noted for writing Jack Reacher books,
Yeah.
he has the same viewpoint that I do. Lee and I have we view that a fiction is a better device to deliver a message than say a nonfiction book. And
Yes.
the reason is because emotional connection.
Right.
You become emotionally invested in a character. You start to like align yourself and start to see the world through you immerse yourself in their world, and then you're seeing everything through their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And so as they're dealing with whatever situation, you're making decisions. You have this emotional connection. What's going on? Why did you do that? I can't believe you did that. But you're able to deliver a lot of powerful messages that way, and it's because of the emotional connection to it. So fiction is I think the most powerful means of doing it because of the emotional connection.
I hadn't
And you have
really
to
thought about that until you just said it. And I'm starting to think, I read a lot of Jack Carr, Greg Hurwitz, Mark Graney. They all deliver a message. It's why they have 19 book series, right? And
yeah.
as soon as the new one's released, I have it read in 2 days, which is, I mean, it'll take me weeks to get through some kind of nonfiction, educational, whatever it is, the science of money or psychology of money or something like that. It's not as easy for me to read. I'm not as emotionally invested as you're
Well, you
talking
said
about.
you're emotionally invested and you love
Yeah.
the characters. You love to. I mean, there's two things. There's also a business side. You do a series because publishers love series, right? Once you get someone hooked, like yourself, you get the next one like that. You
Yeah.
already have a built-in You already have a built-in audience. You already have, like, the sales are already there. You
Right.
just need to go harvest them. But no, it's also just a good way to take. You want to see your characters continue to do all these adventures and all this stuff, and you are attached to this person, and because you also see a lot of yourself in this person.
100. That's a big, big part of it. I think that's
Yeah.
a lot of why I read the genre that I read is because I mean, even with nonfiction, before I started to become an entrepreneur, I would read everything put out about GWAT. One of my favorite books ever is called An Angel from Hell. It's written by Ryan Conklin, who served in Tikrit, Iraq, which is where my first deployment was. And I was so connected to that book because what he's writing about, I've experienced in real life.
Mm.
I know exactly the places he's talking about. I can see them vividly when I'm reading these texts, but also, like, to your point with the rest of the books, I just relate to them. I see myself in a lot of these characters.
And therefore, then, if the author wants to deliver some kind of a message, you get it loud and clear. It comes through. One thing that I wanted to deliver in my books was I want people to be more prepared. I think preparedness is just an insurance policy, but the level of preparedness isn't just like having one thing. I kind of developed this idea of having years ago called the 4 pillars of survival, and those deal on resources, those deal on skill sets, mindset, and then physical fitness. And I drive that home in the books as you're reading it. I mean, most people, the first thing you always think about, everyone's a fight for resources, right? When you
Mhm.
look at any apocalyptic, that is going to be the baseline of a plot, is a fight for some kind of a resource, right? This group wants this thing, right?
Mhm.
But that thing is out over here. I need to go get it. So it's got the resources. So you don't have to go. And so when I look at the preparedness angle, and it's worked, by the way, I'll just jump back. It's I've had so many people that have said they're born again preppers because of reading the books. Like, I didn't realize I was not prepared. Like, holy shit, because they're watching what the characters are going through. They're seeing the equipment or the resources, or the things, or the skill sets they don't have. And like, I need to learn how to do this. I need to do that. I need to go get a weapon. I always looked at weapons as this. No, weapons are tools. That's all
Yep.
there. It's simply a tool. It's a tool in your tool chest. And when you get one, you need to know how to use it properly. Um, and so all these things, I've had so many people, I've driven, even women. When I look at the demographics of the book, there's a sizable portion that are women that are reading, that are also coming away from it feeling empowered. They're like, I need to go do the same thing. I want to make sure that I'm prepared. And so they go about the means of acquiring these things, acquiring skill sets, making sure that they get their mind clear, making sure that they stop becoming fat bodies, and take care of their fitness, which is critical. You have to have the physicality in order to handle a survival situation. Um, and so I drive that home in the books, and it's definitely gotten a loud and clear from the audience.
I love it, man. So you've written how many at this point?
I've written exactly 40 books.
That's
Yeah,
insane.
I'm prolific.
That's in how many years? How long ago was your first, not the
So
children's book, but your first, like,
so I
novel?
published The End is the first book in the New World series, and I published that in 2013.
So in 12 years, you've written 40 books.
Yeah, in fact, my last book I published was 2 years ago, so even less. I
Is there
haven't written a book in 2 years.
is there more coming?
Yeah, of course, there's more coming. I've just been really focused on the publishing side of it. I created another company. It's another publishing company that I talk about here and there, but it's more of a content farm,
Hmm.
to be quite honest. We're just creating some really cool content and getting it out there. I just launched kind of another little kind of a side thing, not a side company that's doing foreign language translations. These are all kind of companies that are adjacent to writing. So I've got my author brand is the center
Hmm.
piece, and then out of it, I've got the publishing house. I got the other kind of content publishing company. I've got this. I do consulting as well for people. I offer my consulting services so people can take their idea and get it to an actual book in their hand. I've had lots of great success in dealing with that. I'm working with 4 guys right now on getting their idea and then successfully publishing it for them, showing them how to do it, essentially showing them how to fish.
Hmm.
'Cause most of them want to self-publish, which I think I highly recommend. The stigma of self-publishing is gone. There was a stigma that, oh, you're not traditionally published, you're not a real author. That bullshit's out the window now.
Yeah,
But
to me, it makes more sense to self-publish because now all the proceeds are yours, and you don't have to
yeah,
deal
well,
with.
what's interesting, there was a time that it wasn't. There was a time, and I fell into this trap. I absolutely fell into this trap, and it cost me a lot of money, like a lot of money. Like the book, the end took off. It did really, it just soared. And to my surprise, and I was like, wow, people actually like this. I can write. I'm living proof that grunts can piece a few words together and create a sentence. Um, so I was actually impressed that it made it. And so I set about writing the sequel in 4 months. It taken me 18 months to write the first novel. And then the opportunity was there. I went from like what I was making in a year, I made in a month. In the first month of that book sales, I was like, holy shit, there's an opportunity. And I go back like to to the military training, and like one thing I know, I look back to the Marine Corps is like we always tell us to do stuff with purpose. Like
Mhm.
if you're walking from across a parking lot, do it with purpose.
Yep, yep.
And right, like do everything is like deliberate, intentional. And I was like, okay. So I saw like this huge opportunity to open. The book was crushing it. Self-published, by the way. I was like, I got to get a sequel out. I got to get a sequel out. And I told my wife, I was like, I got to do this. She goes, well, you got this job, blah, blah, blah. I actually going back to diving. And I was like, I don't think you understand. I showed her a spreadsheet. She goes, oh, wow. Yes, you can quit your job. I was like,
Right.
honey, in 1 month, I've already made what I made last year. It's like, get at it. I said, because the door's open. I got to get it. I got to get the sequel out. Publishers were calling, small ones. I turned them down. Then Penguin Random House called. Like, hey, we love your book. We're sitting in front of it. We're reading it right now. I was like, okay. And I made this stupid decision to sign a 4-book deal with them. And yeah,
How much do they
they
take?
they take God 75%.
What the fuck? For
Yeah,
what?
but see, here's this thing. This is where I was still kind of this stupid guy being ego driven. And it was this whole narrative I told myself I'm not a legitimate author. I'm not a legitimate writer unless I'm with one of the big publishing houses. Then
Mm,
I could say I am, because when you go in like polite crowds, you tell people you're an author, like, oh, who are you published with?
of
It's almost like
course.
a litmus test,
Yeah.
right? To see if I'm like legit. And I throw it. I'm with quite a few. I mean, I'm Penguin Random House, Macmillan. Like, oh my god, oh you are legitimate. Like, what? So I wasn't before, huh? Anyway, this is people have this. Oh, you see people's brains explode when I tell them I never went to college, though.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
they're like they have a meltdown. Like, so which school did you go to for creative writing? I was like, I didn't go to school. Like, what? What do you mean?
I get that in the AI company with some of the AI stuff I come up with. They're like, where did you learn how to do this? I was like, I taught myself. Like, the internet's a great place. You can learn a lot of things.
It's actually like Elon Musk talks about that, and it's so true. There's so much free knowledge to be accessed right there on the internet. You can teach yourself anything. The only thing you don't have is the accreditation that proves you sat in a classroom. It's actually a proof that you spent tens of thousands of dollars to get the
Yeah,
information.
exactly.
When you can just go find it and just do it yourself.
I'm curious with your experience. Is self-published the way to go? The only reason I ask this is because late last year I was challenged to write a book telling my transition story for the audience here, and I'm about 40,000 words into it. I'm sure it's going to be at least double that by the time it's done. And when I set out to do this, like everything else, I set out to do it the right way and really, kind of build a New York Times bestseller. Can you get on that list without having a publisher as a self-published author?
Very, very incredibly difficult. And I will say this: it's because when I look at the sequel to the end,
Mm-hmm.
when that was in pre-order, it was dominating the Amazon. I was outselling Stephen King. I was like, I do incredibly well. The only disadvantage I had, based on that New York Times like monitor sales, they work off of Nielsen scannings, like a Nielsen. You've heard of the Nielsen ratings on television? Well, Nielsen also does like a rating or ranking based on the number of barcode scans, right, from bookstores.
Okay.
And they also really at the time they weren't. I believe they weren't counting ebooks,
Mm.
and so but like most of my sales around. By the way, most titles actually are 65% of sales are ebooks nowadays,
Yeah, I
and
figured.
yeah, and
Or
I
audiobooks now. That's becoming a
yeah,
big thing.
audiobooks comprise, but the market share is about 15%.
I
easily
mean,
20, and they're just cannibalizing like hard physical books. Those books are just I have a whole theory on what that's going to happen with them eventually, but so I think had my books been in bookstores and gotten the scan, I would have had a New York Times. But just based on the volume of books I was putting out, I was selling thousands and thousands of books a week. And when you look, I mean, it was insane. I was outselling like on the one list, like The Long Roads, the sequel. I was outselling Stephen King. I was outselling George Martin. I was I was crushing it. And this is with Penguin was we were in contract negotiations. They're like, oh, we got to get this guy. And like, they offered me, and this is like unheard of, like for a nobody. They gave me $250,000 to for the 4 books. It was an amazing advance that they gave me, kind of unheard of these days. You don't hear of large advances unless you're J.K. Rowling, Stephen King, Jack Carr probably, because he's got now you've got a solid name brand.
yeah.
The checks just write themselves now.
Well, and
But
Jack Carr's done a lot to help build himself up too. I
oh,
mean, I feel like
100%.
his
First and foremost, though, he's a great author. He's a
yes,
great writer. He delivers an incredible story. He's an incredible storyteller. And that's the end of it. You can have all the branding and bullshit and pomp and promotions, but at the end of the day, someone's going to crack the book open and they're going to read it. If it's dog shit, you're going to get flushed out right away.
yeah.
You're
Well,
going to go, this guy can't write. You can have all the promotional shit you want, but until someone cracks, and that's what Jack's got. Jack writes really great stories.
yeah, yeah. I love Jack a lot because I found him long before The Terminal List was ever a TV show on Amazon. He was just getting started. I think there was only 2 books out at the time when I found him, 2 or 3. I read all of those in like 4 days. Just incredible. And what I particularly like about his style is he uses kind of some fact in there as well. And again, we talked about messaging and the message that he delivers. It's really cool to see how he does that. And the only issue I have with his writing is like, because I come from the world that he writes about, I don't need to know the brand of every fucking weapon or tool that the guy's using in the book. Like, I know what you're talking about. You don't need to describe it to me, but it's amazing. And I'm curious, I've had a few authors on here, and a lot of authors are like, don't become an author because there's no money in it. You sound like the opposite of that. You
That's not
sound
true.
you sound like that there's a way to earn a really good living as a writer. And I really want to open that up to the audience here, not only to the veteran community, but even like people like my wife. My wife is a brilliant writer. She's gifted. She loves writing, but she doesn't know how to go and get herself published, and like won't take a chance on her, and also doesn't think that there's money in it. So how did you discover that there is money in it, and how do you keep that money flowing? Whereas like some of the other authors I've had on here have like 1 or 2 books, they're not consistently putting out different series or whatever. Like, how do you make a comfortable living becoming an author? Because I know there's plenty of vets who are getting out who would love nothing more than to spend the rest of their life writing.
It's a great question. It's good, but I do want to finish the New York Times thing.
Yeah,
There
sorry
are people
about
that do
that,
it.
man.
Yeah, but no, real quick, and I'll answer that. But I'll do it real quick. There are people that do it. I know David Goggins self-published his title, and it hit New York Times list. And one thing he had that most people won't have is he had that gigantic name brand already.
Mm-hmm.
So he already had that going into it, and he had also set up distribution because of the name brand he had, which was nice. So he was able to get his self-published title into physical stores. He was able to do things that, again, 99.999% of like self-published authors are not going to be able to. There are other lists that you can get on though that are actually more accurate. And by the way, the New York Times has been known to be a little puffy.
I,
Like they just aren't necessarily accurate, and people are buying it. Some people have accused them of having some fraudulent like numbers going on. They're not legit. The USA Today, I happen to be a USA Today bestseller. Those actually use all the actual information that are out there. They count ebooks, they count paperback, they count online sales as well as physical book sales in a store that are scanned. They take all those numbers and put them together. And I think the USA Today list is a more accurate understanding of what a bestseller, because it aggregates all of those numbers versus just physical bookstores and scanned
So,
things like that.
in your view, the USA Today means more as an author than New York Times, and that's my own ignorance because I'm not an author yet.
I
And
would say that, but now I'm sure. But if I were to get a New York Times tag, I'd be all about putting it out there, because that is what
it's the most
people.
recognized, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
I
what's
mean, it's
what
just,
people see.
yeah. Oh, you're a New York Times list. Yeah, I would absolutely lean into that, and I would do that all day long if I got it. But if you were to get down into, I know some people probably think I'm just coping because I didn't get my New York Times tag. But the thing is, I swear I would have gotten it back with the Long Road back in the fall of 2013, just based on the sheer numbers of what Amazon was doing. I think I was selling 1,000 units plus a day. I was pushing so many titles. It was the money that was coming in, the sales that were going out was insane. And then I was like looking, I was like, I think I'm gonna get a New York Times. I didn't know anything about that then. I was like, I didn't get anything. No one recognized me. What the fuck? And I've looked into it. I was like, well, that's because it was only available on Amazon, and it wasn't available in like physical bookstores, and that was whatever. Um, Going back to making money, like I was fortunate. I came in at a time in 2013. I think there's just some timing too. When I went back and when you go back and look at the amount of content that was available, it wasn't as much content as there is today. There's a crazy amount of competition these days, and I was very fortunate that my first book got picked up. And again, it boils down to a lot of people were picking it up, but then it resonated with people. I can't say I'm the best writer on the planet. I don't ever I never went into it wanting to be the best writer, wanting meaning like I never went into it wanting to win a Pulitzer Prize or some kind of literary award. I wanted to entertain people. I
Mm-hmm.
was entertained from books, and so I look at being an author as being a storyteller. I understand people use it for entertainment purposes mainly. You get a lot, you're getting something out of it, right? And so I wanted to write compelling, entertaining stories. People can be transported out of their lives somewhere else. That's all I did. And I think I've done my job, because I've sold a lot of books over the years. And I think it's just about being that storyteller and making sure, but can you make money? Yeah, that's my living. I'm still
Mm-hmm.
a novelist. I've got a publishing company. I've got two. Everything I do is adjacent to publishing and writing and all of that. So you can make money at it. It's not easy though. It's not an easy life.
You
A
gotta
lot
love
of
it.
work.
You gotta love it.
You got to have a passion for it, man. And if you're self-publishing, you're also going into business for yourself. You have to look at it that way.
That's the fun
And
part. That's the
yeah, I
fun
mean, if
part.
you control all the mechanisms. You control the production of it. Then you control the distribution, and then you have to control all the promotion and marketing of it. And like for someone like yourself, you've got like one thing from a branding standpoint, you've got a podcast that's out there, people are seeing. That's something good to attach a book to, because you're already known. You've got a known quotient. There's a
Mm-hmm.
certain percentage of your listeners and viewers that are going to pick up your book because you wrote it, because you already have a brand.
Right.
Someone entering into the space not having anything established already, it can be difficult to get
Mm-hmm.
noticed out amongst the millions of other titles that are out there. So it's not impossible, but it's can be difficult, like to get to where you're making a comfortable living as a writer.
I love it, man. Geoff, man, I really appreciate you being here, sharing your wisdom with us. I would love for people to be able to reach out, find your books, look into the publishing company if they are interested in the services that you offer there. So, can you tell everybody how they can find you?
Yeah, the best place to find me is just go to my website, gmichaelhop.com, and there's a contact page. Just reach out to me. You send me an email. I reply to all the emails I get. Any questions that pertains about writing and whatnot, do there. My one publishing company is called Beyond Afraid Publishing. I co-founded that back in 2019. That just deals in like nonfiction, paranormal kind of things like that. Kind of an interesting, another whole world over there. But yeah, so find me there at gmichaelhop.com. And all my books are on Amazon. Some of the books you'll find in Barnes and Noble and other physical bookstores around the US.
I love it, man. Geoff, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all your wisdom and for telling your story and allowing me to tell your story. I really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Geoff Hopf. Please go download his books, ebooks, physical books, whatever it is that you like. Do you have audiobooks of your stuff too?
Yeah.
I love it, man. I love it. You give yourself 3 opportunities to sell a damn book, and there's people out there that buy all 3. It's incredible.
Hey, but you should. What's interesting with the technology today, I know we're trying to wrap this up.
It's all good.
Is that when you do an audiobook now with Amazon, so if you do the Audible, if you get the Kindle, they actually sync with each other. It's called the Whisper Sync. So you can read it at night, and then when wherever you left off, the audiobook will pick back up, so you're in your car. Well, it syncs with it.
Yeah, something else I really like about that is Hormozy. When you buy his books, he tells you how you should read his books, and it's get the audiobook and the physical book or the ebook and listen to it while you're reading it, because it's proven scientifically that you retain more of the information. And so I think that's kind of driving a lot of why people are buying multiple copies of it. I got rid of all the physical copies of my book because I got tired of putting them in boxes. I like to move. I don't like to be in one spot for a long time. And those fuckers get heavy real quick. They get heavy real quick. So what I did was, in order to keep the integrity of my quote unquote library without buying all these books again, I used Goodreads and just scanned the UPC of all my books. It just puts them on a shelf. So I know what books I've had before. And if I ever just want to go read it again, I'll just buy a digital version or the audiobook version of it. And it lives on my phone, which goes in my pocket. And I don't have to carry heavy ass books around anymore.
I love it. And Billy, that's the future. That's where things are going.
I think so too. I really do. Yeah. I kind of hate it. There's definitely certain things I like a physical book for. Like I can't read anything on my phone. I had to get the giant version of the Kindle Scribe to read books just because my hands are so big. That little Kindle, it's just like, fuck, this is not comfortable to read. But other than that, man, I'm with you. I think everything's going digital, and it's cool to see you being at the forefront of it with your publishing company and as an author. So I really appreciate your time and the knowledge that you shared with us. Hopefully there's a ton of value here for those who are interested in becoming authors. And that's it for today, man. I really appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you too, Adam. Really. Thank you so much. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week with another banger of an episode. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.